Homelessness is often seen as an unsolvable crisis, an issue too complex and ingrained in society to ever be fully eradicated. Yet, one country may have found the answer. Finland has developed a groundbreaking strategy aimed at eliminating homelessness entirely by 2027. While New Zealand technically maintains the lowest homelessness rate, its success is questionable. Finland, on the other hand, has been widely praised for producing real, measurable results. So how did Finland manage to do what so many other nations have failed to achieve? And why isn't the rest of the world following in its footsteps? The question of homelessness is one that haunts cities around the world. It's an issue that governments struggle to address effectively, yet Finland seems to have cracked the code. In 2017, there were approximately 89,500 homeless people in Finland. By 2024, that number had dropped to just under 1,700. On the surface, this looks like an undeniable success. But is it really? Finland stands as the only country in the European Union where homelessness is significantly decreasing, and it has been for decades. This isn't for lack of effort in other nations. Countries like the UK, Germany, and France all have shelters, aid organizations, and dedicated national strategies in place. Yet, despite these efforts, their homelessness numbers continue to rise rather than fall. Finland, however, has taken an entirely different approach, one that has redefined the very concept of how to address homelessness. Traditional strategies for tackling homelessness often rely on a method known as the staircase approach. The idea is that individuals experiencing homelessness must first address the underlying issues that led them to the streets, whether that be drug addiction, mental illness, or financial instability, before they can access permanent housing. In theory, they are expected to gradually work their way up, moving from emergency shelters to temporary housing, and only then earning the right to a permanent home. However, this method has proven largely ineffective. Overcoming addiction or mental illness is already incredibly difficult under normal circumstances, but it becomes nearly impossible when someone is living on the streets. The result? Most homeless individuals get stuck in the system, unable to meet the requirements to move forward, eventually relapsing and finding themselves back on the streets once again. Recognizing that the traditional model was failing, Finland chose to flip the approach entirely, pioneering what is now known as the Housing First strategy. Instead of treating housing as a reward for rehabilitation, Finland made it the very first step. The government began offering permanent housing to homeless individuals at the outset, without requiring them to meet strict conditions like sobriety or participation in treatment programs. By giving people a stable home right away, Finland found that solving underlying problems such as addiction, unemployment, and mental health struggles became significantly easier. The state provides small, individual apartments for those in need, ensuring that they have a safe and private place to live. Unlike in the traditional model, those receiving housing are not forced to give up drugs or attend treatment programs, nor are they evicted if they relapse. However, they are required to pay a small rent, which encourages them to secure some form of income. Additionally, they receive comprehensive support services, with teams of social workers assisting them in job hunting, managing bureaucracy, and accessing necessary mental health or addiction treatments. Many of these housing units are part of larger centers, where around 100 homeless individuals live in small apartments with an on-site staff of about 27 social workers who ensure the community remains stable and supported. This radical approach has worked. Finland's homelessness rates have continued to plummet, while other nations struggle to make any meaningful progress. By recognizing that stability is the foundation for rehabilitation rather than the other way around, Finland has demonstrated that homelessness is not an inevitable social problem. It is one that can be solved. The question now remains, if Finland has proven that there is a way to end homelessness, why isn't the rest of the world following suit? Critics argue that the Finnish model simply hides the problem rather than solving it. The key to Finland's success has been government-paid housing, but detractors claim this artificially reduces homelessness statistics rather than reintegrating people into society. The concern is that while people are off the streets, They are still dependent on government support. Very few transition to completely independent living. And if financial aid were to be withdrawn, homelessness numbers would likely spike once again. But that, in essence, is the point of the policy. The Finnish model doesn't demand that homeless individuals transform into self-sufficient, addiction-free, fully independent citizens. Success is measured differently. Getting people off the streets, into safe housing, and moving them one step at a time toward reintegration. Even if they remain in government-subsidized housing, pay a small rent, and live in a more stable environment, that is already considered progress. Of course, this approach is expensive. The Finnish government spends significant sums on purchasing and converting apartments into homeless housing, subsidizing developers, keeping rents affordable, and employing social workers. But even with these costs, studies suggest that Finland actually saves money. The financial burden of emergency services, policing, and legal systems associated with homelessness is drastically reduced. Each housed individual saves the Finnish government around 15,000 euros per year compared to if they had remained on the streets. The benefits extend beyond finances. It's better for homeless individuals who no longer have to endure dangerous and unstable living conditions. It's better for the general public, as crime and drug use related to homelessness decrease. And it's even better for the government, which ultimately saves money despite the initial investments. If the model works in Finland, why isn't it replicated everywhere? The answer lies in both practical and ideological challenges. Practically speaking, Finland's system relies on a fundamental condition: housing availability. Cities in Finland tend to own much of the land, allowing for large-scale social housing projects. In contrast, many other places, particularly in the midst of housing crises, lack the capacity to build at the necessary scale. Take California, for example. The state has attempted a similar housing-first approach for over a decade, but has not seen the same results. Strict zoning laws, high real estate costs, and a lack of coordinated social services make it nearly impossible to replicate Finland's success. Finland remains an outlier, a country that has chosen to redefine success, not by making homelessness disappear entirely, but by ensuring that no one has to live on the streets. It's a vision of possibility, one that challenges conventional wisdom and asks whether the real failure is not in giving people housing, but in refusing to try. Is it possible to end homelessness in America? Ending homelessness in America seems like a daunting task, but the numbers suggest it is far from impossible. Finland has demonstrated that with the right policies, homelessness can be dramatically reduced, if not eliminated. The question is not whether it can be done in the United States, but whether there is the political will to make it happen. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's 2023 Annual Homelessness Assessment Report, over 2 million people were experiencing homelessness during the annual point-in-time count in January 2023. That number may seem overwhelming, but let's put it into perspective. One way to estimate the cost of housing every homeless person in America is by comparing it to the cost of incarceration. Housing a prisoner is an expensive endeavor due to security and administrative costs. The Federal Bureau of Prisons' 2021 annual determination of average cost of incarceration fee estimated that in 2019, imprisoning one person for a year cost $39,158. Adjusted for inflation to December 2023, that number rises to $46,114.24. If we applied this cost to housing every homeless person in the U.S., the total cost would be around $100 billion per year. Of course, using the cost of incarceration as a benchmark is a high-end estimate. A more reasonable approach would be to consider the average cost of rent across the country. According to the Apartment List National Rent Report for January 2024, the nationwide median rent was $1,379 per month. Covering rent for all over 2 million homeless individuals at that rate would cost about $33 billion per year. The United States spends over $1.5 trillion on Social Security each year, an amount that lifted 29 million people out of poverty in 2022. Even at the highest estimated cost of $100 billion, ending homelessness would amount to just 7% of that spending. Looking at other anti-poverty measures, the Federal Earned Income Tax Credit (EITC) distributed $57 billion to families in 2023, helping 6.4 million Americans escape poverty. Even using the most expensive method to end homelessness would cost just over half of what is spent on the EITC. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, which lifted 3.7 million Americans out of poverty in 2022, cost $112 billion in 2023. 4 times the highest estimated cost. These numbers reveal an important truth. The money exists to end homelessness in America. The problem is not a lack of resources, but a lack of prioritization. Finland's success in reducing homelessness was built on a housing-first approach, providing people with stable housing before addressing other challenges. This model has already been tested in American cities, with promising results. Expanding such programs nationally would require a shift in policy, but the financial feasibility is clear. The real question is not whether we can afford to end homelessness, but whether we have the will to do so. The numbers make it clear that a solution is within reach. The choice is ours to make. How Finland became the world's happiest country. Finland, the happiest country on earth, defies expectations. It's cold, dark, and swarming with mosquitoes, yet it consistently tops global happiness rankings. What's their secret? First, nature plays a huge role. Despite most Finns living in cities, those cities are packed with green spaces, forests, lakes, and even nature reserves. Unlike the concrete jungles elsewhere, Finnish cities integrate nature into daily life. Residents value this, ranking proximity to nature second only to transportation. The country's low population density also ensures that even in urban centers, green spaces remain accessible. Culture also contributes. Finland is remarkably homogeneous, over 90% Finnish and 60% Lutheran, with a deeply ingrained trust in each other and their institutions. This trust extends to work culture, where companies emphasize flat hierarchies, autonomy, and a manageable 35-hour workweek. However, don't be late. Punctuality is serious business. Finland's history of surviving harsh conditions and foreign rule may have reinforced this reliance on community and trust, eliminating homelessness. Security is another pillar of Finnish happiness. Low crime rates, economic stability, and universal access to basic needs make Finland one of the safest places to live. With a poverty rate of just 2% and a life expectancy among the highest in the world, Finns don't have to worry about their basic survival. Even geopolitically, they're secure, shielded by the EU, NATO, and wealthy, stable neighbors except, of course, Russia. Their decision to join NATO in 2022 only strengthened the security. Economically, Finland wasn't always prosperous. For much of history, it was a poor backwater relying on lumber. Industrialization, innovation, and strategic economic policies transformed it into a tech powerhouse, home to Nokia, Linux, and even Angry Birds. Their heavily taxed yet efficient welfare state ensures citizens receive health care, education, and social benefits, all backed by a highly trusted government. But Finland isn't without problems. A shrinking population threatens its welfare system. Housing costs are rising, and the energy crisis, exacerbated by cutting off Russian gas, has led to skyrocketing electricity prices. Even so, Finns remain resilient, proving that happiness isn't just about wealth or climate, but security, trust, and an enduring connection to nature.